Have you ever felt that peculiar unease that arises when you realize you're seeing the world differently from those around you? When your reflections on life, on the meaning of things, on what truly matters, seem out of place in everyday conversations about work, consumption, and entertainment, this feeling of intellectual isolation is not just your imagination or a sign of arrogance. It is an inevitable and rarely discussed consequence of personal growth and the development of critical awareness. There is an emotional cost we pay when we expand our understanding of the world, and this cost is seldom mentioned in motivational speeches about self-development. For millennia, human beings lived in small, homogeneous communities where knowledge, beliefs, and perspectives were widely shared. The medieval farmer didn't worry about having intellectually stimulating conversations because everyone around him had roughly the same level of information and cultural references. The village functioned as a large collective brain where each individual was a cell thinking similarly to the others. There was comfort in this cognitive uniformity, a sense of belonging that naturally arose from the convergence of perspectives, the knowledge revolution that began during the Renaissance and accelerated dramatically in recent centuries, fundamentally changed this dynamic. For the first time in human history, it became possible for individuals to accumulate levels of knowledge and develop perspectives that significantly distanced them from their peers. What should have been a liberation paradoxically turned into a subtle form of social exile. The more a person learns, the further they drift from the common experience shared by most people. This phenomenon has intensified exponentially in the digital age. Today, we have access to an amount of information that would be inconceivable to any previous generation. We can study philosophy with the greatest thinkers in history, understand the mechanisms of human psychology, explore the frontiers of science and technology, all without leaving home. But this cognitive privilege comes with an emotional cost that is rarely acknowledged. Every book we read, every insight we develop, every layer of complexity we add to our understanding of the world distances us a little further from the shared experience of the majority. The situation becomes even more complex when we consider that deep self-knowledge often reveals uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we live in. When we begin to question dominant narratives about success, happiness, and fulfillment, when we develop the ability to see through the collective illusions that sustain social cohesion, we inevitably drift away from the shallow conversations that make up most of everyday social interaction. Imagine trying to explain to someone who has never deeply reflected on the nature of human consciousness why you feel disconnected from the endless pursuit of status and material possessions. How do you convey the perception that many of the things society considers fundamentally important are in fact arbitrary cultural constructs? How do you share the understanding that the very idea of a fixed permanent self is a cognitive illusion when the person next to you is fully invested in maintaining and promoting that illusion? This disconnection doesn't occur only on the intellectual level. It permeates interpersonal relationships in subtle but profound ways. You find yourself censoring your thoughts in casual conversations, simplifying your perspectives to avoid discomfort, pretending interest in topics you find trivial. A kind of double consciousness develops where you maintain a public, palatable version of yourself while your deeper reflections remain private territory. The problem worsens when we realize this situation is neither temporary nor easily resolved. We cannot simply unlearn what we've discovered about ourselves and the world. Knowledge is irreversible. Once you see the invisible structures that govern human behavior, you can't pretend they don't exist. Once you develop sensitivity to the contradictions and paradoxes of the human condition, you can no longer settle for simplistic, comforting explanations. Let me pause for a moment and ask you directly, do you also feel this tension between personal growth and social connection? This feeling that the more you understand about yourself and the world, the harder it becomes to find people who share this same depth of reflection? I know it might sound like elitism or arrogance to express this, but many of us carry this weight in silence, believing we're the only ones experiencing this particular form of intellectual loneliness. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this isolation when I realize that." Your honesty might help others understand they're not alone in this experience of growth, accompanied by distance. The irony is that we live in an age of unprecedented connectivity, yet many of the most conscious and self-aware people report increasing levels of existential loneliness. Social media allows us to connect with millions of people, but how many of those connections offer the kind of depth and authenticity that an expanded consciousness naturally seeks? Most digital communication remains superficial, perpetuating the same dynamics of social performance and external validation that self-knowledge gradually teaches us to question. This paradox reflects a fundamental tension between individual development and social cohesion that has always existed, but has become particularly acute in modernity. Traditional societies had built-in mechanisms for dealing with individuals who developed different perspectives or deep insights into the nature of reality. Shamans, sages, mystics, and philosophers held socially recognized roles that allowed their unique perspectives to be valued without threatening the stability of the community. In contemporary society, those traditional roles have vanished or been marginalized. We lack adequate social structures to integrate people who have developed levels of self-knowledge that distance them from the common experience. The result is that these people often feel like foreigners in their own culture, external observers of social dynamics in which they can no longer participate naturally. The issue becomes even more complicated when we realize that the kind of self-knowledge that generates this isolation often includes the insight that the very search for connection and belonging is, in a sense, a form of emotional dependency. When you understand the psychological mechanisms that drive us to seek external validation and social approval, it becomes difficult to engage in these behaviors with the same innocence as before. But this awareness doesn't eliminate the fundamental human need for connection. It only makes satisfying that need more complex and problematic. There's also a temporal dimension to this paradox that's rarely discussed. Deep self-awareness often involves a long-term perspective that sharply contrasts with the short-term focus that characterizes most contemporary social life. When you develop the ability to see historical patterns over time, when you understand how social and technological changes operate on scales of decades or centuries, it becomes difficult to engage with the artificial urgency dominating public discourse on current events. This expanded temporal perspective can create a kind of chronological dislocation where you feel like you're living at a different pace from the rest of society. The issues dominating 24-hour news cycles seem trivial when viewed through the lens of long-term historical processes. The anxieties consuming most people's emotional energy seem rooted in a limited understanding of the true challenges facing humanity. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of this paradox is the gradual realization that the very idea of solving or overcoming this dilemma may be fundamentally flawed. The isolation that accompanies deep self-awareness may not be a problem to be fixed, but an inevitable feature of the growth of human consciousness. Accepting this reality requires a fundamental redefinition of what it means to live a connected and meaningful life. One possible perspective is to understand that there are different types of human connection and that quantity is not necessarily more important than quality. Perhaps it's better to have a few relationships characterized by depth, authenticity, and mutual understanding than many superficial connections based on social conformity. This shift from quantity to quality can help transform isolation from a deprived experience into one of conscious selection. There is also the possibility that the isolation associated with self-awareness is temporary, a necessary transitional phase in the evolution of human consciousness. As more people go through similar processes of personal growth and expanded perspective, perhaps a new form of community will gradually emerge, one based not on uniformity of beliefs and perspectives, but on a shared capacity to navigate complexity and ambiguity. The digital revolution, despite contributing to the problem, also offers potential tools for its resolution. For the first time in history, people with similar perspectives can find each other regardless of geographic location. Virtual communities based on deep intellectual and philosophical affinities are emerging, offering spaces where people who've undergone similar journeys of self-knowledge can connect and exchange experiences. But perhaps the most important transformation is internal. The process of accepting and integrating the isolation that accompanies personal growth may itself be a profound form of consciousness development. When we stop resisting this reality and begin to explore it with curiosity rather than resentment, we discover that solitude can be a source of creativity, insight, and spiritual growth. The enforced solitude of self-knowledge can function like a kind of involuntary retreat, where we are confronted with aspects of ourselves and of reality that we would normally avoid through constant social engagement. This confrontation, though uncomfortable, can lead to even deeper levels of understanding and acceptance. There is a crucial difference between loneliness and solitude that becomes particularly relevant in this context. Loneliness is the experience of being alone against our will, a feeling of deprivation and disconnection. Solitude is the ability to be alone in a productive and enriching way, a condition that allows for types of reflection and creativity that are impossible in the midst of social life. The journey of self-knowledge can be seen as a gradual process of transforming loneliness into solitude. This doesn't mean the need for human connection disappears, but that it becomes more selective and conscious. Instead of seeking connection as a form of escape from self-confrontation, you learn to value relationships that expand and enrich your understanding rather than simply offer emotional comfort. This perspective requires a fundamental re-evaluation of what success means in human relationships. Instead of measuring the quality of our social lives by the number of interactions or ease of social integration, we might begin to value them based on the depth of mutual understanding and the capacity for shared growth they provide. The question becomes even more interesting when we consider that this pattern of isolation through knowledge may be a necessary evolutionary phenomenon. Perhaps this is how human consciousness develops, through individuals who temporarily distance themselves from dominant norms and perspectives to explore new ways of understanding and experiencing reality. These pioneers of consciousness experience the emotional cost of being ahead of their time, but they also have the privilege of contributing to the gradual expansion of human understanding. Their discoveries, insights, and perspectives eventually spread through the broader culture, paving the way for future generations to reach similar levels of self-awareness without the same degree of isolation. This historical perspective offers a way to contextualize and give meaning to the personal experience of isolation. Instead of seeing it simply as an unfortunate cost of personal growth, we can understand it as a contribution to a larger evolutionary process that is gradually raising the level of consciousness of the human species. But even accepting this broader perspective, the practical question remains: how to navigate everyday life when you feel disconnected from the concerns and priorities that dominate the experience of most people around you. One possible approach is to develop what we might call social bilingualism, the ability to communicate at different levels of depth depending on the context and the needs of the people involved. This does not mean being fake or manipulative, but recognizing that different situations require different types of communication. Just as you wouldn't speak to a child the same way you would speak to an academic colleague, you can learn to adjust your level of communication without sacrificing your fundamental authenticity. This skill requires practice and discernment. It involves learning to identify when it is worthwhile to share deeper perspectives and when it is more appropriate to keep conversations at more superficial levels. It also requires developing the patience and compassion necessary to interact with people who have not yet undergone similar processes of questioning and growth. Paradoxically, this ability to navigate different levels of communication can in itself be an advanced form of self-knowledge. It demands a sophisticated understanding of both yourself and others, as well as the emotional flexibility needed to find value and meaning in different types of human interaction. Perhaps the most liberating insight is the realization that the problem lies neither in you nor in others, but in the cultural expectation that all human relationships must operate at the same level of depth and intimacy. Just as we have different types of physical needs that are met by different types of activities, perhaps we have different types of social and intellectual needs that require different types of relationships. If these reflections have touched something you've been feeling, but perhaps hadn't yet found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we gather here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us on this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. The journey of self-knowledge, with all its challenges and paradoxes, remains one of the most valuable adventures a human being can undertake. The isolation that sometimes accompanies this journey can be seen not as a punishment for growth, but as a sign that you are moving toward more authentic and deeper forms of existence. And perhaps, in the end, we will discover that true human connection does not happen despite our differences and complexities, but precisely through them.
Every year, more than 1 million people die all over the world in car accidents. Most of them are caused by human error, like people drinking and then driving or falling asleep at the wheel or whatever. Self-driving vehicles are likely to save about 1 million lives every year. This is amazing. You think about climate change. So yes, developing the AIs will consume a lot of energy, but they could also find new sources of energy, new ways to harness energy that could be our best shot at preventing ecological collapse. So there is enormous positive potential. We shouldn't deny that. We should be aware of it. And on the other hand, it's very difficult to appreciate the dangers because the dangers, again, they are kind of alien.
Please welcome Yuval Noah Harari and Sir Stephen Fry.
Goodness me, I wasn't sure anyone would turn up. Isn't this rather exciting? Well, it's a great thrill for me to be with this hero of mine, really, Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure many of you will have read the book that catapulted his name into world fame, Sapiens, a remarkable history of our species, which involved many, many extraordinary insights and a kind of thrilling narrative of its own. But one of the things, Yuval, that I think many of us were impressed by was the way you showed that perhaps Sapiens was almost the wrong title. It wasn't that we were the wise humanity, but that we were storytelling humanity. That what separated us from the Neanderthals and from other primates and set us on our course was the fact that we told stories about ourselves and about the world as we apprehended it. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And would you say that this is both what gets us into trouble, because a story is also another word for a lie, and also what propels us into a stable future?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword in this regard, which becomes particularly important in the age of AI, because for the first time in history, we encounter a better storyteller than we are. We took over the planet not because we are more intelligent than the other animals, but because we can cooperate better. And we cooperate through storytelling. And you have the obvious examples like religions, but my favorite example is money, which is probably the greatest story ever invented, ever told, because it's the only one everybody believes, or almost everybody. I mean, humans. No other animal on the planet knows that money even exists, because it only exists in our imagination. But now there is another thing on the planet that knows that money exists, and that can maybe invent new kinds of money and new kinds of other stories. And what will happen to us when we have to deal, it's not just with one better storyteller, but with billions of better storytellers than us on this planet. That's, I think, one of the biggest questions of our age.
Yes, and you're talking, of course, about AI, and it's recently come to light that one of the large language model corporations, Anthropic, has revealed that its latest instance of Claude was, in a closed test, was seen to blackmail some people in order to achieve a goal. And when we think about AI, we either get very dismissive of it. It's merely a parrot repeating probable instances of human communication, a stochastic parrot, as Emily Bender, the computational linguist, famously called it. It's every time it gives you a sentence, no matter how intelligent it appears, it is merely following a probabilistic route.
The question is it not the same with us?
Yeah, exactly.
When I look at the way sentences are formed in my own mind, like now when I'm talking with you, I don't know how the sentence will end. Yeah. I start saying something, and the words just keep bubbling up in the mind. And as a public speaker, it's something terrifying because I don't know if I will be able to complete the sentence. I'm not sure what will be the next word.
That's right. You're talking and you're trying to make sense, and suddenly you've come up with lettuce. Where did that happen? It's an unrolling carpet. Syntagmatic, I think, is the technical word for it.
And the amazing thing with AI, you can now ask the AI to show you exactly how it thinks. You can actually watch how the logic unfolds in the AI in a way which is very difficult for us to do with our own minds. But we can now do, the AIs don't have minds, at least as far as we know, but we can see how the sentences, the stories are being formed in their, whatever we call it.
If we ask them to, but the fact is I've spoken to people like Jeffrey Hinton and people who are called the godfather of AI, and they would say that the most disturbing fact about these current models is that nobody knows what's going on under the hood. They don't actually know how it's doing what it's doing.
If we could know everything that's going on there and predict it, it wouldn't be AI.
That's the point. Exactly.
If you have something that you can predict how it will behave, what decisions it will make, what ideas it will invent, by definition, this is not AI. This is just an automatic machine.
The way to make that clearer, perhaps, is to recognize that AI now can beat, just on your phone, any chess player in the world. And you obviously can't predict the moves it's going to make, because if you could predict the moves it was going to make, you would beat it, or it would be a stalemate every time. And you expand that to the whole of AI. You don't know what it's going to say or do, which is why it's a useful tool. If it could only match what we did, it would be not a tool. It would be like saying a digger, a JCB, could only dig as much as a human with a spade. The point is we have these machines to outmatch what we can do, yeah?
I think that's the main point. Both the main promise of AI is to be better than us at decision-making in many fields, that it would be able to invent things that we cannot think about, but that is also the main threat.
Yeah.
That we cannot predict how it will behave, and we cannot control it in advance. No matter how much we try to make it safe, to align it with our aims, with our goals, I think it really goes to the heart of what AI is.
Yes.
That usually we think about AI as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it's no longer artificial. Yeah. If you think about what an artifact is something that we create and we control. Yep. With each passing day, AI is becoming less and less artificial. which is why I prefer to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence.
Yeah.
It is, even the word, in a way, a true intelligence is never an artifact. Because an artifact is something that you create and control, whereas intelligence is characterized by the ability to create new things.
Yeah. You used a verb there very quickly, but it's worth expanding on it, and that was align. And for those of us who are concerned, shall we say, about how AI is going, one of the main problems is what is known as the alignment problem. There's a simple way of looking at it, which is an old philosophical thought experiment called the genie. So if you imagine a genie who gives you a wish, and you love life and you're an empathetic person, so you say to the genie, can you really bring any wish true? And they say, yes. You say, in that case, could you end all suffering? And instantly, all life on the planet is extinguished. Because to the genie, they look at the world, and all suffering comes in form of life. All forms of life suffer. Smallest animals and us. That's the only place where suffering exists. Stones, as far as the genie is concerned, don't suffer. Maybe trees do, it's not sure, but if it gets rid of all life, it has solved our problem, and it bows and says, there you are, master. Now, that's a very broad sense of the alignment problem. We asked a very stupid question. We didn't think it through. But the fact is, yes, we have to understand AI and alien, but we really have to understand ourselves in order, because we don't have shared ethical frameworks around the world. How do you encode dignity, love, sympathy, passion, joy, equality? We've only just learned, if you like, recently that women's and men's lives and dignities are equal and that people of different races are equal. We've only just discovered this. And there are many other things we aren't sure about. And how, therefore, can we expect the machines to be sure? And therefore, we ask them a question, and it might do an equivalent of what the genie does. How do you see a solution to that?
Well, one of the other key things about AI, because it can learn and change by itself, so whatever we teach it, we cannot be certain that it will always just comply by our instructions. Again, if it only does what we tell it to do, it's not really an AI. So when we think about the alignment problem, or how to educate AI to be benevolent and not harmful, it's a very problematic and imperfect analogy, but I think it's still useful to think about AI as a child, as the child of humanity. And what we know about educating children is that they never do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. Yes. If you tell a child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying and cheating other people, it will copy your behavior, not follow your instructions. Now, if we have, the kind of people who are leading the AI revolution, telling the AI, don't lie, but the AI observes them, observes the world, and sees them lying and cheating and manipulating, it will do the same. Yeah. I mean, if AI is developed not through a cooperative effort of humans who trust each other, but it is developed through an arms race, a competition. So again, you can tell the AI as much as you like to be compassionate and to be benevolent, but if it observes the world, because AI learns from observation. Yes. Yeah. If it observes the world, or it observes how humans behave towards each other, it observes how its own creators behave. And if they are ruthless, power-hungry competitors, it will also be ruthless and power-hungry. You cannot create a compassionate and trustworthy AI through an arms race. It just won't happen.
Well, yes, Yuval, you've said this. If you had said this in 1980 during what was known as the AI winter, we'd say, yes, we must plan and make sure this isn't happening. But it's already happening. There is an arms race. The very people who are spending the billions and billions are the same people, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, who gave us the disaster of Facebook and social media and what it has done to the polity of the world and to the poverty of the world, to essentially, in this country, as we know, the rivers are polluted and contaminated. You wouldn't swim in any river in Britain because there's raw sewage being poured into it. Well, our children are breathing a cultural river which is similarly polluted and contaminated. And we all know this, and Facebook knows this, and Twitter and X know this, but they do nothing about it. And if you even mention guardrails and regulation, they scream communism. And Trump has just announced that he will ban individual states in America from regulating AI. There is an arms race. So everything you said is happening. So how can we come together to stop AI in the hands of corporate greed and national greed in this arms race, whether it's China against America or it's one company against another? It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's moving very fast, partly because there is also enormous positive potential, of course. You know, in everything from healthcare to tackling the climate emergency. Yes. So we have to acknowledge there is also this enormous positive potential. The question is not how to stop the development of AI, it's how to make sure that it is used for good. And here, I think that the main problem is simply an issue of priority, of what comes first. Humanity now faces two major challenges. On the one hand, we have the challenge of developing a super intelligent AI. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we have the challenge of how to rebuild trust between humans, because trust all over the world, both between countries and also within countries, is collapsing. Nobody is absolutely certain why it's happening, but everybody is able to observe it. I mean, maybe the last thing that, let's say, Republicans and Democrats in the US can agree on is that trust is collapsing.
Yes.
It's that they don't trust each other. They don't agree on any fact except that they don't trust each other.
So this is the worst possible time for us to come together. We no longer believe in global institutions like the United Nations, the WHO.
Even in national institutions.
Yes.
I mean, one of the explanations for the collapse of trust is that over thousands of years, I mean, humans have been amazing in building, despite all the conflicts and tensions and so forth. You know, 100,000 years ago, humans lived in tiny bands of hunter-gatherers and could not trust anybody outside their band of 50 or 100 individuals. Now we have nations of hundreds of millions of people. We have a global trade network, a global scientific network with billions of people. So we are obviously quite good at building trust. Yeah. But over thousands of years, we have built trust through human communication. And now, within almost every relationship, there is a machine, an algorithm, an AI in between. And we see a collapse of trust in humans, whereas there is a rise of trust in algorithms and AIs. Again, I mentioned money as the greatest story ever told. So you see that people are losing trust in human-made money, like euros and dollars and pounds, but they shift the trust
from fiat to
cryptocurrencies and to an algorithm-based money. So we have these two problems of the developing AI and rebuilding trust between humans. And the question is which one we solve first, which is the priority. Now, unfortunately, you hear some of the smartest people in the world, they say, first we solve the AI problem, and then with the help of AI, we'll solve the trust problem. And I think this is a very bad idea. If we develop AI through an arms race between humans who can't trust each other, there is absolutely no reason to expect that we'll be able to trust the AIs. I mean, the big paradox is that when you talk with people like Mark Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk, they often say openly that they are also afraid of the dangerous potential of AI. They are not blind to it, they are not oblivious to it, but they say that they are caught in this arms race, that if I slow down, my competitors will not slow down, I can't trust them, so I must move faster. But then you ask them, okay, so you can't trust your human competitors. Do you think you'll be able to trust this super intelligent alien intelligent you're developing? And the same people who just told you they can't trust other humans tell you, oh, but I think we'll be able to trust the alien AIs, which is almost insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the right order of doing it is first solve the human trust problem, then together, in a cooperative way, we can develop and educate trustworthy AIs. But unfortunately, we are doing the exact opposite.
Yes. And there's, as you know, there's been for decades the doomsday clock, which the nuclear scientists set midnight is Armageddon, the end of everything. And it's been roughly at 89 seconds to midnight for the last few years. It's crept up over recent days for obvious reasons. But there's another metric that I've been studying recently called P-doom. It's the letter P, which is probability, brackets, doom, close brackets. It's one used by people in the business, you know, the scientists in AI. So, for example, Alicia Yudkowsky, who's the founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in California, sets P at 90. That's to say, a 90% chance of human extinction through AI. Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist for Meta, sets it at 0. But then he is the chief scientist for Meta. So that's like a tobacco executive saying, cancer? No chance. What are you talking about? Can't possibly happen. But so I've worked out that roughly the lowest median is between 7.5% and 10% of human catastrophe of an extinction order through AI, if things are not controlled in the way you say they should be. Now, the chance of winning the lottery in this country is 0.0000022%. So what you're saying here is that the chance of human extinction at 7.5%, which is the lowest really amongst the current important scientists, Nobel Prize winners like Hinton and Hassabis, 7.5% is 3.4 million times greater than 0.00022%. So if I were to give you a lottery ticket and say this is a valid lottery ticket, the only difference is you are 3.4 million times more likely to win, you would take it. And that's the odds we're playing with at a low rate. So let's look at the bad side of things. As we've said, we're going about it in the wrong order, as you've put it. Most people who understand the science say there is a very severe chance that humanity will be extinguished by this, a greater chance than by nuclear Armageddon, in fact, or indeed climate change. And humans are not in a position at the moment to trust each other and to establish guardrails, to agree on how we should go forward. So do you have a solution for us, Yuval? I'm almost on my knees begging you at this point. I don't have children, so I can almost say I don't care. But I have lots of godchildren, and I have lots of great nieces and great nephews, so I do care about what happens to our planet. And I'm sure you do too.
Again, I think that it's very dangerous to think too much about, kind of doomsday and extinction scenarios. They cause people to despair. We do have what it takes to manage this revolution because we are creating it. This is not the dinosaurs being extinguished by an asteroid coming from outer space that they have no way of even understanding, let alone controlling. This is a process which, at least for now, is under human control. In 5 years, in 10 years, we will have millions and even billions of AI agents taking more and more decisions, inventing more and more ideas. It will be a hybrid society. So it will become more difficult. But we need to start with the realization that this is a completely human-made danger. We have everything we need in order to manage it. The main missing ingredient is trust between human beings. And again, over tens of thousands of years, we have demonstrated that we are capable of building trust, even on a global level. Yes. So it's not beyond our capabilities. And it then goes back, to the old questions of politics and ethics, of how do you build trust between human beings. And we need to think also about more kind of concrete and immediate questions. One of the biggest questions we will be facing in the next few years is how to deal with these new AI agents.
Yes.
Do we consider them as persons? More and more people are entering relationships, personal relationships with AIs. More and more corporations and armies are giving AIs control, agency over important decisions. This is not some kind of philosophical question.
No,
it's a
real.
Completely should AIs have the ability to open a bank account and manage a bank account? Yeah. That's a very practical question. We are very close to the point when you can tell an AI, go out there, make money. Your goal is to make $1 billion. Yeah. In computer science, very often the difficult question is, how do you define the goal? Yeah. And one of the things about money, it's a very easy goal to define. Yeah. Now, an AI can make money in many ways. It can hire its services to people to write their essays or books or whatever, many things it can do. It can earn money. It can then invest this money in the stock exchange. Yeah. So do we as a society want to allow AI agents, and then this is not a question for 50 years, this is a question for 5 years, maybe 1 year, to open bank accounts and manage them in any way they see fit. Yeah. In the US, basically, the legal system, they never thought about it, but I'm not sure about the situation in the UK, but in the US, there is an open legal path for AIs to be recognized as persons with rights.
Yes, Pete Singer has written about this and others.
According to US law, corporations are persons and they have rights like freedom of speech.
Yes.
Now, so in the US, you can incorporate an AI. Previously, when you incorporated a corporation like Google or General Motors or whatever, this was a fiction. Yeah. Because all the decisions of Google were made by human beings. Yes. So, okay, legally, Google is a person with rights, but every decision of Google needs a human executive, accountant, engineer, lawyer to make the decision. Yeah. Now this is no longer the case. Yeah. You can incorporate an AI, and the AI can make the decisions by itself. Yeah. One of the reasons that the US Supreme Court recognized corporations as persons is in order to make it possible for corporations to donate money to politicians. This was the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Right. Now, so imagine an AI that makes billions of dollars. It's maybe the richest person in the US in a few years will not be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. It will be an AI. Yeah. And this AI has the freedom of speech, which includes the right to donate money to politicians, maybe on condition that they further advance rights for AI.
Absolutely, and reduce guardrails and so forth. Yes.
Now, this is a completely realistic scenario. This is not like science fiction.
No, absolutely.
So, and this is a question that we as a society need to decide, do we acknowledge AIs as persons with rights? Now, there are people who are already convinced that AIs, because they have interaction with them, have consciousness, have feelings. So maybe in a few years, the world is divided between countries that recognize AIs as persons with rights and countries that don't.
Absolutely. And I suppose for everyone in the room, there's a consideration. I remember I gave a talk on AI back in 2015 in Haeunwai, and I said that the way things are going, there are certain jobs that people might not have. I said, for example, if you have a child who's studying to be a doctor, that's fine, but maybe a radiologist. And woman put her hand up very crossly and said, my daughter's studying radiology. And I said, well, you know, imagine that every mammogram ever taken is available to an AI and it can examine thousands in a second and make a judgment on it. A radiologist is going to go out of work. Now, who's going to go out of work here? I don't know if the chief financial officer is present of Octopus, but I have been sort of talking to some people who say that the first really high-level job to be replaced by an AI completely will be a CFO. They can be so well, everything they do.
It's already happened. It's news editors.
Oh, really?
One of the most important jobs in the 20th century, even before, was news editors. The editors of the newspapers, of the television, they were extremely powerful people who control the public conversation.
But I think what I would just end by saying to everybody is maybe don't concentrate on how efficient you are, on how brilliantly you complete a task, because that's what AI can do, especially the agentic AI that Yuval's been talking about. Concentrate on what a wonderful human being you are, how kind you are, how courteous, how considerate, how you improve the life of those around you, which is very often the opposite of what efficient people do. And maybe that, for the time being, at least, is the secret, that human exceptionalism will be how good we are as people, how much we make a room light up when we walk into it, how much pleasure we spread, not how quickly we can complete a task, because we'll never match the AI. So on that note, at least I think we should end, and I hope we haven't given too much terror to everybody. I will always say that the thing about this technology is it's simultaneously thrilling and chilling. And the thrilling parts may well cause us all to live much longer, happier lives. We can hope so. But Yuval, as always, an absolute joy speaking to you, and thank you for...
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
How do you see the future for humans?
That's a big question. We don't know. Nobody has any idea how the world would look like in 50 years or even 20 years, because it depends on our decision. One of the biggest dangers is that our own creations will get out of our control and will enslave or annihilate us. The very term AI, people think of it as an acronym for artificial intelligence, but with each passing year, AI is becoming less and less artificial. By artificial, we mean something that we design and control. Yes, we write the code, but it's the first technology in history that can create new ideas by itself. So it's not really a tool, it's more like an agent. And just imagine the situation in a couple of years when the world or society is populated by millions, perhaps billions, of these new alien intelligences, creating not just text and video and art, but creating new financial devices, new weapons, even new religions.